Welcome to this episode of Ambition Today, a podcast show discussing with other entrepreneurial and ambitious people what it means to achieve success, grow your startup, try to change the world, and accomplish your goals today. On this episode, we are joined by Eric Duffy, co-founder and CEO of Pathgather. Pathgather is a beautiful and engaging learning platform for the modern workplace. Make sure you open that app in your pocket, search for Ambition Today in the iTunes Store, Stitcher for Android, SoundCloud, or on YouTube, and click subscribe. If you're really awesome, you can subscribe at all 4 places, but then that's probably just showing off. Either way, we love you for the support and thank you. Today's episode of Ambition Today is brought to you by none other than Audible.com. Visit audibletrial.com/ambition today to download and keep any audiobook for free. This is Ambition Today.
Looking to make your dreams come true? Needing that extra push to become more successful? Then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Ambition Today with your host, Kevin Siskar.
What's up, world? How's it going? You are listening to Ambition Today, and I am your host, Kevin Siskar. You can find me on Twitter at @thesiskar or online at www.siskar.co, where we have all the most recent episodes and also some great blog posts. On today's program, we are joined by my friend Eric Duffy, co-founder and CEO of Pathgather. Pathgather is a social learning platform for companies that connects people around personal and professional development. Eric, how's it going? I've been waiting for this episode.
What's going on?
I'm excited to have you here.
Excited beyond belief to be here.
Awesome. So we are here at the beautiful Workbench offices in New York City, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks for having us here. So normally we start with people's background on the show. I'm specifically curious about your background because I know that you're not the only founder in the family. Your brother Aaron is creating some pretty cool things as well. So entrepreneurship seems to run in the family. So what do you what was it about your upbringing that you and your siblings are entrepreneurial and led you early on into that, you think?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily about the upbringing, what contributed to it. Surely something did. But for me, it was really solving a need that I felt, shortly after college. So it's pretty tied up specifically with the founding story. Because I didn't grow up thinking that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. I didn't even necessarily think I wanted to go into business at all.
Okay.
I was kind of looking at, maybe the nonprofit world or something like that. And it was only, maybe near the end of college that I started learning about social business, stuff like that. That was intriguing to me. And that's what kind of got me into the entrepreneurial realm.
What during that time are you specifically?
It was more, it's asking the question of myself, what do I think is going to allow me to have the most impact in my short time on Earth?
Nice. So a little philosophical.
A little philosophical, sure. But life is short and you only have, so much opportunity to do something. And obviously nonprofits are great, but they don't, you got to spend a lot of your time fundraising. So if you're spending 30-40% of your time fundraising, how are you going to actually make forward progress?
Yeah, we had the for-profit nonprofit discussion a few episodes ago, and basically how sometimes a for-profit model, as long as you can keep the morals intact through the company, can get you there faster and make a bigger impact faster. But obviously there is that added thing where you need to make sure the main objective stays, whatever cause you're working towards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't have to be a moral objective, but yeah, the one of the benefits is that it's self-sustaining and you can reinvest in the business as needed.
Okay, great. So what around this time, you went to college, you're thinking, how can I make a big impact on the world? Then what led you to Pathgather after college?
Yeah, well, in college, I studied architectural design, with the idea there being that, I can, architecture is important in people's lives. Obviously, it shapes the environment that we live in, and it's physical, it's tangible. There's something appealing about that, about creating something that you can be inside and you can, touch the walls, and it's a cool idea. At the same time, it's, it wasn't quite for me. There's a lot to architecture that I like, and a lot that, wasn't as appealing.
Okay.
So after college, I, was not exactly sure what I wanted to do. Took a bunch of standardized tests, wasn't sure if I wanted to go to grad school or not. And ended up going abroad, doing an entrepreneurial program in South Africa, which I guess, as you alluded to, helped to give me the spark of the idea for Pathgather.
Wow. Why South Africa?
It was a program called Think Impact, and their idea is that through identifying needs in certain places, creating a business, you can, have an impact on places. They operate in lower income places. So in South Africa, it was a village that I was in, and the project that I ended up working on with some of the people in the village was creating a water cistern.
Okay.
You'd use that to capture rainfall in the winter, use it to create farm crops and generate income that way. That was kind of what we were working on there. And that was cool because I got to use some of my design background to create the water cistern. But something that I noticed when I was there is that they had just gotten electricity about 6 years before I'd gotten there. This was in 2011.
Okay.
But a lot of people already had cell phones and were therefore connected to the internet.
Smartphones or just like old flip phones?
Yeah, some people had BlackBerries.
Yeah.
Not everybody did. But this is really like, if you think about the entire course of human history, this particular place, probably most of South Africa, did not have access to information technology. And then all of a sudden, within about 5 years, they're connected. They're almost as connected as someone in New York City.
Okay.
Obviously, they don't have broadband, but they're getting there. Education in the village was not particularly successful. About 2 people went to college a year. So if you imagine that you can leverage connection to the internet, which means you have access to the world's top information towards a better education, and that can have a pretty sizable impact if you give people the right platform to not just access that education, but to use it in the right way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so you were firsthand seeing this happening and the impact it could make.
Yeah, I mean, it was more imagined. So at this point, it was really just the inkling of an idea, and it would take another
Pathgather
year.
was.
Yeah, I mean,
But you could see the effect that education injected properly into a place that it wasn't previously, information technology, and the impact and power it could make.
So you could certainly imagine it. Now, I mean, people had cell phones, but they weren't necessarily accessing educational materials with it. But yeah, you could see that, right now people are limited to a very small number of books, but if you give them access to everything, literally, and you not only allow them to discover the right learning content, but to keep track of what they're learning, to show other people what they've learned, to engage with their peers on a platform, then it could be pretty valuable.
Okay, great. So then I'm assuming you came back to America, right? After South Africa.
I did.
And then how did you start Pathgather? What was the origin of that?
Founder Institute played a role in that. And that's why I was saying, like, I wasn't necessarily going to be an entrepreneur. The idea always appealed to me, but my mom saw an article for Founder Institute in the New York Times, which had just come out when I got back.
Okay.
And so I applied and went from there. And I suppose you've told the audience what the Founder Institute is.
Yes, the audience is pretty familiar with Founder Institute. But yeah, that's actually how we know each other. So that's a good story. So by the time you left Founder Institute, when you got to Founder Institute, Pathgather was just an idea. And by the time you left, where were you at?
So it's just an idea. I'd certainly done my preparation prior to Founder Institute. I was taking my entrepreneurial online courses. I was sketching out the idea. I might have even created my business model canvas prior to going there. But yeah, it was just words on paper. And over the course of the program, they walk you through different highly structured aspects of a company that you should know about. And by the end, had created some mock-ups. There was a high fidelity mock-up that looked like the site was real, but it wasn't at the time.
Right. This is one of my actually favorite stories about your journey. Is do you mind diving into that a little bit? As far as
you can dive.
yeah. So a lot of people today are like, oh, I need an MVP, and they think they need a technical co-founder. An MVP needs to be a working website, and this and that. But almost everyone I've talked to that's had a successful MVP, it was a minimum viable product, and most times it wasn't even online. It was like running a meetup in the case of Shahab on the previous episode in the DC area. So yeah, this is a perfect example. You basically took some mock-ups, animated them so it looked like a working website, and then put those up as sort of like the landing page, and that had some pretty good success out of that, right?
Yeah. So, and I guess that's an interesting viewpoint on MVPs, because clearly it was an MVP in that there wasn't even a working product. So actually, if you go to our website right now, we have to change this pretty soon, but if you go to pathgather.com and you view the video there, that's still the same video that...
Oh, really?
Yeah, from like 2.5 years ago. It's not completely accurate anymore. Obviously, things have changed, but it's still like mostly there. But yeah, at the same time, it's very high fidelity in that the way you're supposed to use the site and the design of it is very fleshed out. So on one hand, I think the lean startup methodology is great in that you don't necessarily want to invest in creating that site before you get feedback from people. At the same time, you want to create something that I feel like if you kind of half-ass it on the design a little bit, or
design's so important nowadays.
Yeah. That if you take the MVP approach on that regard, then you're not necessarily going to get the feedback that you want. And, people might give you feedback that says, oh, I don't like this feature, but maybe they just don't like how it's implemented. And so I think there's definitely something to be said for really putting your head down and getting things right before releasing them for feedback. And this is maybe partially influenced from my architecture education, where you have design reviews during a project, and you post your stuff up on a wall, and you have 4 or 5 professors sit in front of you and critique you. And even if your ideas are solid, if you haven't really put the time and energy into making it look right, you're going to get all sorts of bad feedback, and they're going to say, well, I don't like your line weights on this drawing or something. Like, you have to make it, even in intermediary steps throughout a process, you gotta put the time in.
Okay. So you put the time in, you made this landing page, and then someone noticed it, right?
Yeah. Someone from Qualcomm noticed it, and this is very fortuitous, obviously. Qualcomm is a Fortune 200 company. They make a lot of the chips in your cell phones. And we got an email, a very enthusiastic email, saying that they had been trying to work on something similar for the past 4 months, and they wanted us to fly out to San Diego immediately, which is where they're headquartered. And so we did that, and it turned out that even though there's a chance that this is a waste of our time, they really were interested in using Pathgather, and within the next 6 or 7 months became our first customer. And I should note that when they reached out to us, we were a B2C product. We were a consumer facing product, and I had never, had briefly considered Pathgather's potential application for a business, but it was not anywhere near the main focus.
Okay. So, so you flew out there, then you ended up building out the product. Actually, you brought on Jamie, right? Mm-hmm. How'd you find Jamie? How do you attract your co-founder, I guess, is the
sure, yeah.
question for the broader audience.
Well, I guess he would have to, he could answer that better than I, but it's a vote for networking, because maybe 6 or 7 months prior, and I never go to networking events, to I think my detriment, but I went to one for an alumni event, and I gave a pitch for an earlier version of Pathgather. It wasn't called Pathgather at the time. I think I called it Uncover EDU. and I bombed. It was a disaster.
Oh, really?
Of a pitch. Yeah, it was terrible. It was like 1 minute long, and I couldn't make it happen. But anyway,
it happens.
Oh, sure does. Yeah. So gave that pitch, and then after I met someone else who I hadn't known at school. He was a year or two above me, but I just talked to him briefly afterwards, chatted, and that was it. And then we stayed in touch, exchanged some emails, and about 6 months later, he was down in Boston. He had met Jamie as part of another program. Jamie was my co-founder, and connected us. Said he's interested in working on an education-related startup as well, and that's how it happened.
Okay. Wow. So really just by putting yourself out there, because you're a non-technical founder. Jamie's the technical founder, right? So by literally doing all that pre-work, putting yourself out there, you kind of created this gravity to attract.
I guess. I mean, I guess you got to go to networking events, and you don't know where stuff's going to lead, obviously, and oftentimes it leads nowhere, but a certain percentage will, assuming you have something that you're working on and you believe in.
Okay, great. So let's take a quick break. After the break, I want to talk more about fundraising and your time at Techstars, and we will be right back with more of this episode of Ambition Today.
This is Ambition Today with Kevin Siskar. We'll be right back.
Let me tell you about Audible.
Audible.com indeed, Eric. Visit audibletrial.com/ambition today to download and keep any audiobook for free. So, Eric, do you use Audible?
I have.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I've been a user.
What did you listen to?
User forever at heart. I listened to 1776.
Okay, how was that?
Don't ask me for any details on what happened. I know there was a war. I know the Americans won.
Okay.
Enjoyable listen.
Okay. Yeah. So we need to get you using Audible for another book. I just finished listening to Hatching Twitter by Nick Bilton. I listened to that last year. And obviously I'm mentioning that because Jack Dorsey just got named CEO of Twitter. But if you want to hear the backstory about all that drama between Ev, Jack,
I heard
Biz,
there's a lot of drama.
Yeah. You need to listen to the book. It's really interesting, and it kind of gives you that insider perspective of what it takes to raise one of the largest social networks from what was really a podcasting catalog company, and then an SMS
like
text messaging.
An ambition today.
Yeah. That's the theme here, Eric.
Right.
We got ambitions, ambitious entrepreneurs, and stories and hustle. So yeah.
Dang.
All right, definitely. Check out audible.com. Get it now, audibletrial.com/ambition today to download and listen for free. And now back to this episode.
You're listening to Ambition Today. Visit us now at siskar.co.
And we're back. So we're here with Eric Duffy of Pathgather. So Eric, it's you and Jamie. The company just doubled in size. What happened next? Is this the part of like the movie montage where it's long hours, hard work, and it just 20 seconds?
Sure, yeah. I guess you could do that from that point until the present day and hopefully beyond. So we, Qualcomm was our first customer, and they believed in the product enough to pay for it and essentially fund our progress from the earliest days, which was amazing, which was really excellent. And again, we're fortunate for that to have happened. But you also, if you have the right product in the right place, then I suppose such a thing can happen.
So what were some of the critical milestones that you guys achieved along this time?
Was that in the early days?
Up until now.
So we were 2 at that point. We're 10 today. And we've obviously grown our customer base. Some of our others are Twitter, speaking of, and Walmart, Choice Hotels is another.
They're all customers?
All customers, yeah.
Nice.
And obviously the team has grown, and that's going to enable us to, we have a big backlog of features that we want to get out, and we're very excited about that.
What is the current incarnation of Pathgather? We talked a little bit about how it had these educational roots, but can you just really specifically get into like what is it?
Sure. So I'll describe the value that we provide for companies. The market that we operate in, and I don't know if a lot of your listeners will know what this is, but it's called learning management systems. It's a tool that companies use to train their employees, in particular to deliver compliance training to them. So if you're a large company and we sell to Fortune 1000 companies, you have to take your sexual harassment courses by law. If you don't do that, then you're going to get fined, and companies can't have that. But you also need to deliver like onboarding training and stuff like that. Learning content today exists in a whole lot of places, not just in a learning management system. It exists in cloud storage like Dropbox, Box, Google Drive. It exists in content management systems and SharePoint, and it exists in a whole bunch of places outside of a company, like Coursera, Udacity, edX. These are all these popular MOOC sites that exist. There's a ton of them. And the problem for companies is that they don't have a single point of access to this learning content. So what Pathgather does is it aggregates all of this stuff together. So if you are a company like Walmart, you can say to your employees, go to this one destination, do a search for Photoshop, and you're going to find content from all of these different sources in one place. And that's a huge benefit just for convenience, for keeping track of what your employees are learning, and for getting a sense of what you need to add to your learning catalog to better satisfy their needs. So that's one aspect.
Yeah.
The other aspect is that...
And to your point, the current versions, in my opinion, are terrible. They look like they are Web 1.0. They haven't been updated since the 90s.
Your opinion and everybody else's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, I don't always mention user interface, but these systems are generally designed very poorly because they are just designed to deliver compliance training. Why do you have to make such a thing enjoyable to use if its main purpose is to deliver a sexual harassment course? It's not that important. But if you actually want your employees to use
this is the generation of millennials.
Exactly. People have different standards. They expect something as easy to use as, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera. And that's certainly, what we're focused on designing. The other aspect is that if you have all of your content together, even a big company like Qualcomm had like 60 people who manage their learning, but it's a 30,000 person company.
Oh, wow.
So how do you manage all that learning for so many people? What Pathgather does is it enables all the experts in your company to curate content for one another, get recognized for their expertise.
Okay, awesome. So you can have multiple contributors and experts.
Right.
Nice. Okay, great. So then I know you went on to Techstars. What was that like?
It was good. It was really helpful just for me as a first-time founder, as an expansion upon what I learned at the Founder Institute. All of this kind of contributed to my education to this point. And it was certainly very helpful for fundraising after the fact. Just in terms of, intros are huge. If you're a founder looking to raise money, it's all about those warm leads and getting a lead into an investor.
Okay, so let's just segue into that. So Pathgather raised what?
1.6.
Okay, and then what was it? A debt round, an equity round, and
convertible note.
Convertible note.
Convertible note, which is debt round.
Okay, can you expand on how exactly that works and how you went about it?
Yeah. So a convertible note is as opposed to equity. So if you raise an equity round, you're basically saying, my company is valued at X, and I'm going to sell X percent of my company for Y amount.
Right.
And that's great if you know what your company is valued at in the early days, but it's very difficult for both the entrepreneur and the investor to have a good sense in the early days. Like when we were raising a round, we had, 3 or 4 customers, but it's still difficult to, when we were 5 people. It's just hard to know at that point what the company is really valued at. So with a convertible note, you can raise a certain amount of money, and there's something called a valuation cap.
Right.
So let's say you raise $1 million with a $5 million valuation cap. That means that if in the next round you're valued at $10 million, that $1 million would not be worth 10%. It would be worth 20% or thereabouts. There's some other stuff that goes on, but it gives the early investors some potential upside, and also, helps the founder know, roughly what they're going to be paying out.
Okay, great. And then so where's Pathgather today? You raised the round,
Yep.
Graduated Founder Institute, Techstars. We're here at Workbench today. What's the update?
Yeah, today is, we're focused on improving the product and growing sales, really.
Okay.
So we're, at some point we might look into raising an A round. But right now we're generating money and
Congrats.
sure, thanks. Just focused on iterating on the product.
All right, great. Well, I'm really excited to see where Pathgather goes. It's one of my favorite companies. I'm excited for you.
Thanks, man.
And I look forward to the future of Pathgather. All right, cool. So now we want to do the Ambition Today question of the day. This is a segment of the show where we pull a question out of a hat and about ambition, success, entrepreneurship, and we throw it at you. You ready?
Please.
All right, let's grab one out of the hat here.
The metaphorical hat. There is no hat here.
Oh, man. You're ruining the show magic.
Yeah.
All right, so the question of the day, Ambition Today question of the day is, what should a new startup founder's first step be?
What should a new startup founder's first step be? Everything is a first step in a way, from thinking about the design of your product to what market you're going after, what the need is. The first step is just to get started and to talk to people about your idea. If you think you got something, just put it out there. And this is obvious, and a lot of people say it, but I'm shocked to hear how many people still feel nervous about sharing their idea with others. Definitely do not be scared about that. The best line I've ever heard about this was actually from Pavel, who we both know from Founder Institute. And he said, don't worry about that because people are lazy. And it's true.
Yeah.
Like, even if you had a really good idea, one, most people are not suited or interested in being an entrepreneur. And two, even if they were, they're probably too lazy to do it. So don't worry about it. And they'll probably fail. Most startups fail anyway. So There are a million reasons to not be worried about the Facebook story. You're very unlikely to run into a Mark Zuckerberg, for example.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work for someone to steal and then execute on.
And if they do execute on it, they're probably going to execute it in a different way than you. So they're not really stealing your idea. They're just beating you to it. So you need to get out there, test your idea, and make it happen.
All right, cool. All right, great answer to the question. Thank you for today's Ambition Today question of the day. So lastly, I just want to ask you about a bit of the news. So yesterday, Twitter, after months of deliberation, finally named one of its founders, Jack Dorsey, as the CEO. I know you're big on design and product. What are your thoughts on Jack Dorsey and the founder coming back as CEO?
Well, I don't have the background that you got via your Audible book, Hatching the Hatchery, or whatever it's called.
Hatching Twitter.
Hatching Twitter. So I don't really, about the ouster. I only know what I read in the most recent articles, but power to him. It's cool to come back to your company that you founded and try to make it happen. Apparently the investors are on his side, or a lot of the investors are. So hopefully they can make some magic happen. Yeah,
I'm excited to see what happens. I definitely think in the last few years, there's been progress, but it has not been at the pace of a $1 billion IPO tech company and what it should be. So I'm excited to hopefully, with having a founder back in, that people will feel they have the authority to change things. So I'm really excited to see what happens with Jack Dorsey back as CEO.
Likewise, and I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling good about the prospects for the company. So they're worth $18 billion or something apparently. So I think they're doing all right.
Do you think he'll be okay doing Square and Twitter? Or is that a non-concern?
I know I wouldn't be, but hopefully he's a greater man than I.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, Eric, I want to thank you for coming on today's episode.
Hey, thank you for having me. This has been great.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to see where Pathgather goes. Obviously, pathgather.com. Everybody go check it out. If you're in HR and you're listening, get on it right now. And then where else can people go find out more about you?
I'm on Twitter. I'm not a frequent tweeter, but they can find me at Duffstar.
Okay. All right. Well, Eric, thanks again. And I will see you next time on Ambition Today.
See you, man. Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ambition Today with your host, Kevin Siskar. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit www.siskar.co. We'll catch you next time.